Hello and welcome to AA Beyond Belief, the podcast. I'm your host, John S. Today I'll be speaking with Pat N. from Olympia, Washington. Pat will be a keynote speaker at the We Agnostics, Atheists, and Freethinkers International AA Convention to be held in Austin, Texas this year. I hope you enjoy the program, the conversation with Pat, and we both hope to see you in Austin this November. Hey, Pat. Thank you very much for agreeing to speak with me today on our podcast.
My pleasure.
I'm so sorry I didn't get a chance to meet you. I wanted so badly to go to the conference in Olympia that you had last year. I hear that went pretty well.
Yeah, it did.
Roger was out there with people.
For a bunch of amateurs first time out, we were satisfied with it. There are a lot of things we'd do different.
Yeah. Well, I thought what we might want to do, Pat, just as a way of getting to know you, would you like to tell us a little bit about your story, about what got you into AA and what's going on with you today?
Sure. Where to start? I was born in Helena, Montana, by the way, in 1934, a few months after, I can't remember exactly whether it was a few months after Bill got sober or a few months after he met Dr. Bob, but anyhow, they were getting ready for me. And my parents had apparently been drinking alcoholically during the 20s, that's my understanding, when there was no AA, but they'd stopped drinking somehow, I don't know. So I grew up in a house where people didn't drink. It was not prohibition-oriented, but they just didn't drink until my mom's later years when she, I think, relapsed. When I was 16, I was working. I grew up in Washington, D.C., actually, but I went back and I was working in Montana in the summer of 1950, I think, and got drunk for the first time. And it was an interesting experience because for the first time in my young life, I really felt relaxed. I felt like an okay person. I felt like a member of society. There was a hole I didn't know I had in my soul that alcohol filled. So even though I got sick as a dog, I certainly wanted to do it again, and I continued to do so. And it wasn't a major problem for a few years, but when I was eventually employable and had a profession and could afford to drink, when I could, I drank pretty steadily. Many times, of course, I got drunk, and blackouts came fairly early. But anyhow, by the time I had a mortgage and a wife and 3 kids, I was really in a lot of trouble. I was doing a really poor job of my job. My marriage was a shambles, and I was really neglecting my kids. They were teenagers by then, and I simply was not meeting their needs. So I had all the shame and guilt stuff that goes with the disorder, and I was just stumbling along and not doing very well, but I knew I was in trouble, and I knew what the problem was. But I couldn't seem to do anything about it. Tried, swore off daily and drank daily. So it's not really a very unique story. Most of my problems were kind of minor. Back in those days, at least where I was, they didn't enforce DWI laws, and I talked my way out of those kinds of scrapes a couple of times that I remember. Anyhow, eventually, I went to see a friend of mine who, I was a counselor by trade, of all things, and I went to see a friend of mine who was a counselor who had a private practice. And the second time I met with her, she said, "I can't help you as long as you've got a bottle under the seat of your truck." And but I want you to talk to my husband, who I knew was in AA, and he took me to my first meeting. And the way I think of it, the first really big event in my life was discovering alcohol, and the next really biggest event was that first AA meeting. Because these were folks of all ages and genders and backgrounds and experiences, but they were telling my story in so many words. And I knew that I was where I belonged, and I said at that meeting, I said I was an alcoholic. Well, I spent some period of time, a few months, I think, but I don't really remember, going to meetings and not drinking for a while, and then I'd feel cured, or I'd feel sorry for myself, or whatever, and so I'd drink again, and then I'd get, in and out, that sort of thing for a while. And finally, in February of 1980, I slid off the road. It was an icy night, and I had never lost control of a vehicle in my life. even when I was driving drunk all those hundreds of miles. And for some reason, that was my bottom.
Mm-hmm.
I threw the bottle out of the truck, or the car, I guess it was, and called my best friend, who was a Pentecostal Christian, interestingly enough, who didn't drink.
Mm-hmm.
And he came and kind of rescued me, and I got through the night and started going back to AA, and I haven't had a drink since. So that's the short form.
Okay. And so how did you, so you were going to traditional AA when you first started out?
Yes, that's all there was.
Mm-hmm.
This was in a small city in Washington called Yakima.
Mm-hmm.
And there were quite a number of meetings, but they were all traditional meetings.
Right.
And so they all read how it works,
mm-hmm.
and they all ended with the Lord's Prayer and so forth. But the overall atmosphere, to my thinking, was entirely different than it is now from the regular meetings that I've attended.
Right.
Everybody kind of said, yeah, these are the 12 steps, that's what you have to do, and so forth and so on.
Mm-hmm.
I was never really comfortable with them, but that's what the people were doing, and it's the people I wanted.
Right.
It's the people who got me sober, and I think I'd wanted to be a member of the human race for a long, long time,
mm-hmm.
and all of a sudden I had a chance.
Right.
And it was hard because, the thing I know about folks getting sober is that here you are, your mind's getting clear, and you have to face the fruits of all the stuff you've been doing for the last few years.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had an awful lot of issues to deal with, and I couldn't drink to get away from them. So it was a struggle, but the people were there.
Yeah.
The people were there.
That's the toughest part about the early part of recovery, is that all the crap from our drinking still has to play out for a while. And then
gosh, people in early recovery are my heroes.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was being heroic, frankly. I think anybody in early recovery is.
Yeah.
Now it's just, it's cinchy now to not drink.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we were talking in our meeting today that, there are some fairly new people to AA anyway, new to sobriety. And that's the toughest part, is that you got all these problems from your drinking, and you just want to shut your mind off so you don't have to worry about it. And alcohol is a great way to kind of numb your mind.
Yeah, it's like basic training. You think you're going to die any minute, and they say, just keep your head down and keep doing it. You'll be okay. And indeed, eventually, if you don't drink, you are okay.
Mm-hmm. But it was the people in the meetings that you were connecting with.
Absolutely. And I got a home group pretty fast. I never had a sponsor. I asked a couple of guys, and it was interesting because both of them, the fellow who took me to my first meeting, and also a priest who was a member of my home group, I asked them to be my sponsor, and each one of them said, I won't be your sponsor, but I'll be your friend.
Yeah.
And I did not understand that at the time. I think I understand it now.
Yeah.
But in any event, I never had a formal sponsor. There was another newcomer, and we had totally different backgrounds. He'd killed people on one thing or another. But we were both dead serious about getting sober, and we just kind of hung out together and clung together and tried to figure out how to stay sober, and somehow the days and the months began to accumulate. And
did you say it was 1980 when you were starting out?
Yeah, that, right.
Okay. And how long were you going to meetings this is a small town area in Washington State?
Well, a couple of years later, maybe 2 years later, my marriage had ended mm-hmm. of cirrhosis of the relationship, and my former wife was not an alcoholic, and she'd done her very best to hold things together, but we're just really, really ill-matched. Mm-hmm. And I fell in love with someone else who is in the room as we speak. Mm-hmm. And we moved over to the other side of the mountains, over to Olympia, Washington. Mm-hmm. And there was still no secular AA. Mm-hmm. I'd never heard of it. But I may be getting too long-witted about this. Mm-hmm. Cut me off when you need to.
No, you're fine.
Okay, I had a brother 2 years older who was in sobriety at that time. As a matter of fact, he just died in July with 50 years. Oh. he lived in L.A., and I used to talk to him on the phone. He was the closest thing to a sponsor I had, and he belonged to the We Ags group in Hollywood.
Oh, okay.
Which, as you know, was one of the first. And a matter of fact, Charlie, what's his name?
Charlie P. Polachek.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm. Polachek was I think was a sponsor, but at least they knew each other quite well. Well, so he told me about this approach to AA, and I like that because I think it was the God. Well, let me back up another hair. Mm-hmm. I had 16 years of Catholic education, and at one time I was a Presbyterian elder.
Okay.
So it's not that I had no background in religion or in Christianity, but by this point in my life, I just really wasn't believing things like that anymore, and I could not buy the God part of the 12 steps and so forth.
Okay.
And so when he told me about this We Ags group, I thought, oh, that's pretty cool. Mm-hmm. And one day at a meeting, I looked across the circle during the Lord's Prayer, which I never said at that point. I saw this other gal, Judy, and she wasn't saying it either. So after the meeting, we got together, and I said, we need to have our own meeting. And I told her about Dick's group in L.A., and she said, let's do it. So we did it, and that's how the group got started here.
Well, that's interesting. When was that?
I wanted to add that my wife, my present wife, who is not alcoholic, but is not active in Al-Anon, but is totally Al-Anon in philosophy, used to go with me some of those early meetings, and we'd be the only ones sitting there.
Huh.
But eventually it grew and prospered, and it's doing well now.
So how long ago was that you all started?
I'm not sure. I think it was 25 years ago.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, so it's been around a while. And then one of the fellows who was quite active in it really liked noon meetings better, so he got 3 noon meetings started locally.
Okay.
At a restaurant. And then a 3 years ago, some of us started we were kind of interested in Life Ring. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, I am.
With their approach, and we said, well, there's no reason that an AA meeting couldn't choose to use that format.
Correct.
And so we started another evening meeting, and we are not a Life Ring meeting, and we don't really follow that format closely, but it is more like just a bunch of folks sitting around the fire talking.
Yeah, how does that work?
Anyhow, a lot of secular meetings have developed because of that.
That approach, I think I know what you're talking about, because I know of another agnostic group in Omaha that does that, and basically...
Oh, really?
Yeah. Is it where you everybody goes around, they touch base about where they are for that week? Is that how it works?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah.
And of course, it just evolves into a general discussion, and there's just, 6 to 8 of us who attend with any regularity, and we know each other pretty well. But we're kind of lucky because we're close to the one of the state's work release programs for prisoners, and they're allowed to walk to our meeting, and so we do get some of those folks.
Oh, good.
And so that's kind of cool.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know that had been around for so long. And also, I was kind of curious because when you started in '80, was AA different in 1980 as opposed to now, as far as being less dogmatic?
I think so. I was still going, of course, to regular AA meetings, and I still have to some extent over the years. I only go to 2 meetings a week now with any regularity, both secular. But once in a while, particularly if I'm out of town, I'll go to a regular meeting. And my overall perception and what I hear other people saying is that it's generally gotten much more religious. Yeah. So that's what I hear. I don't know. But I don't remember it being that way when I first got sober. As I mentioned, one of the members of my home group was a priest. One of the others was a nun who happened to be his cousin. Anyhow, I don't remember them ever talking about religion.
Right.
They certainly talked about their spiritual lives and what was going right and what was going wrong. But
yeah, I think it changed a little bit.
Even they weren't overtly religious, I didn't feel.
Yeah, I had the same experience, although I came in much later than you. I came in 1988, And it would be very, very rare for anybody to ever talk about their specific religious beliefs or anything. You might hear people suggesting prayer and that sort of thing, but it wasn't as I was okay there. I mean, I just kind of went with it. I was kind of like you in that I was desperate enough. I wanted to stop drinking that I didn't care. I just figured, this stuff might help me. I just go along and do it.
Oh yeah.
But it did change over time a little bit, and I changed too. Maybe that's what I changed probably more.
Yeah, I can't sort that out, and I don't care. Whatever works. But I'm very concerned about the people who come into AA looking for help, but because of their own histories and their own beliefs, are just turned off immediately by the God stuff.
Yeah.
And that's, as far as I'm concerned, all of AA is wrapped up in the preamble.
Yep.
And everything else is superfluous.
Yep.
And if it helps somebody, that's great. They should use it, but it shouldn't be set up as a requirement. Not in my book.
I agree with that. So, do you guys get a lot of newcomers at your meetings? People that wouldn't go to AA otherwise?
We see. Well, what we usually get, we get probably 20 to 30 people a week now. Okay. At our Sunday morning We Ags group. Mm-hmm. And there's a pretty solid core of old-timers and people who have been around that group for a while. We get a lot of people who come in just because, they've got to get their slip signed, or they're checking out AA, and this is one of the meetings that they're checking out. And many of them do stick around, or at least they say, this is what I've been looking for.
Yeah.
And a lot of the people who are I'm called old-timers, but a lot of the people who have been around for a number of years in that group don't go to other meetings, or they say, this is my home group, this is where I feel comfortable.
Yeah.
And sometimes somebody there for their first meeting and say, yeah, boy, I'm going to be back. They like that atmosphere, because we don't reject religion. We don't. It's not a religion bashing group. We do talk a lot about spirituality. It just works out that way.
Right.
But it's so not judgmental. We have people come in who want to talk about their religious views, and that's accepted too.
Sure.
That's their path.
Absolutely.
When we were first getting going, one of the people who came regularly was a retired minister from another town. And one of the others used to always have to leave early. We meet on Sunday mornings, and he had to leave early to sing in the choir. So whatever.
Yep. Well, that's the way it should be. That's what we try to do too. But I think 20 to 30 people is a huge meeting. I'd like to see ours get like that someday. We have probably 15 as our normal size meeting, and then sometimes we get up to 20. Yeah. But rarely ever go over that.
It varies, and we'll have a slack day now and again, but I'd say pretty consistently it's 20 to 30. We're a pretty urbanized area. Mm-hmm. And you were asking about how things are out here. There aren't that many secular meetings. There's supposed to be 3 in Seattle. I think there's one that's active that I've been to. Mm-hmm. And another one which was just kind of weird because of the way it was being run. Mm-hmm. And there were only 3 other people there. Mm-hmm. And that's about it. A new one has just started in Burien, Washington, which is near Seattle. Yep. And another one has started in Gig Harbor, which is just up the road from us here. So that's and there's one over on the other edge of the state in Spokane. Okay. But those are the only ones I'm aware of.
Okay. Yeah.
And of course, Tom B is doing a tremendous job down in Oregon, and there are a lot of meetings down there now.
Yeah, that sounds pretty amazing what he did over there. He just moved to Illinois now.
Did he?
Yep.
I didn't even know that.
Yep. He's living in Illinois now, doing pretty good over there. In fact, right now, I think he's probably on the road right now, taking a little trip across the country down to Mississippi. But,
I thought he was still in Portland or down in that area. I didn't realize that.
And I saw him. He was in Kansas City a couple weeks ago. We had our anniversary party here for our group.
Yeah, I'd like to have come to that.
That was a lot of fun. Roger came down, and he gave actually the same talk for us that he gave in Olympia, because I thought that talk in Olympia was superb that he did there.
And, which one?
Well, he give the talk about the history of secularism in AA.
Oh yeah.
And I thought he just did a fantastic job with that.
That was excellent. Yeah.
So I asked him if he'd come down and do the same thing for us, and he did. And people loved it. We actually had people at that meeting that just go to traditional AA who have never ever even heard of an agnostic AA meeting before, because we sent invitations out to the whole AA community. And every single person loved it. Every single person found it interesting and fascinating. And
oh yeah, it really is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I heard him here, and I guess I still have a CD of it, and it seems to me he published. I don't know if he published it or he's done so many things like that when he was doing AA Agnostica.
Yeah, he published that, and then he made a few minor changes to it when he came to Kansas City, and now he's going to write. He's going to rewrite the whole history of agnostic AA because he wants to, I guess, update it and everything. So that's kind of neat.
Yeah. Well, exciting to be involved in all this and to see how it's taking off, because I think I'm a little bit maybe fanatical on the subject, but I ran into a situation a few years ago with a young woman, a junkie as it happened, who walked into a non-secular meeting I was at, and as soon as they were through with the introduction and how it works and probably the third step prayer and Lord knows what else, she says, "Is this some sort of religion?" And I thought, "Oh nuts, we've lost this one."
Yeah.
But at the end of the meeting, the one other woman who was there grabbed her, and they went outside for a smoke, and we're having a long conversation. I thought, it's probably going to be okay.
Good.
Because there's the human touch.
Yeah.
But anyhow, I'm so conscious of that we've got to do it, because there's hurting people out there who just don't want the religion.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right, and I think that we're going to make a change overall to the overall culture of AA. It's I think it's already kind of changing a little bit. People are realizing that maybe we've gone a little bit too far, a little bit too rigid, and all that.
Well, it's interesting to me. We started. We didn't know what to do about the Lord's Prayer, except we didn't want it, and so we decided to use the commitment, whatever you want to call it, the commitment or the statement of principle. The when anyone, anywhere thing, and so we did that. And now I notice I do go to the occasional non-secular meeting around here, and by golly, they're using it too.
That's good. Not around here.
The Lord's Prayer is dying out here anyhow. At least in
not here.
World.
It's not. It's not at all here. It's still.
Oh, it's a lot tougher in the Midwest and the South than it is out here.
Yeah, I would say
this isn't called the left coast for nothing.
That's true. That's true. That's true. People, I think it's more that it's just kind of traditional for people to say it, and they're not really thinking about it.
Yes.
And they, I don't know. But yeah, I'm getting pretty tired of the Lord's Prayer. But more than anything, I'm kind of like you too about thinking about the new people come in, especially people in their 30s or 20s who, I mean, they're much different than they were when I was coming into the program. They have more information. They have a different language that they communicate. Their recovery, it's just a different thing. And I think like that one woman, they're going to look at the stuff that's happening in the meetings and they're going to think it's a little bit bizarre. Whereas I don't know, for whatever reason, I just kind of, I went with it, but. Anyway.
Well, yeah. And we didn't really have any choice at that time.
No, it's true too. We didn't.
And maybe we weren't quite as confident or well informed and didn't know that we could just walk out. But there was nothing to walk out to.
It would have been frightening.
And there's not only secular AA, but there are all these other secular alternatives now. And
true.
But the thing is, AA is around. There's always AA available, and that's why I think it's more important to try to change AA than to just stimulate things like Life Ring and Smart Recovery and so forth. That they're great, but they're just so scarce.
I agree with that. I see AA as having an amazing infrastructure of service that has been built up over 80 years.
Yeah.
It's
not going away.
It's not going away. I happen to be answering the phone this week for our central office after hours. So 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, people around here, if they're having a crisis in their life related to alcoholism, they can call and someone will answer the phone and talk to them. And that's just incredible to have that resource.
Yes.
And to have all these different groups all over the country. So I think it's definitely worth staying in and preserving and saving and changing, I guess. Saving, I don't know.
Well, you never know. I hope it's helping keep me sober anyhow.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, Pat, about the experience of the of starting that conference in Olympia.
Sure.
Because I'm kind of interested in doing something in the Midwest like that.
Oh, that'd be great.
How did that come about? What did you run into when you were doing that?
Right. We're going to do hopefully there's going to be a panel in Austin on that. Jerry F. from Phoenix and some other folks put one on down there in last November, and then we put ours on in February. And I would really like to see regional get-togethers, maybe in the alternate year when there's not being an international convention. Anyhow, a couple of us, I guess 3 of us from my home group got to go to the one in Santa Monica, and of course just loved the experience and just got talking about it. And some folks who hadn't gotten to go also talking about it and just said, why can't we do something like that? Not just a local meeting, but sort of a regional kind of, have it local, but make it regional and encourage people to come. So that was the genesis of it. And it turned out there were 4 of us who wound up doing most of the work because we were all retired and we could meet during the days and we didn't have jobs to go. And so we just took whatever experience we'd had in other kinds of groups and put it together. We'll have a handout on it in Austin. Some of the things we learned and some of the mistakes we made and some of our recommendations. But it's entirely feasible.
Yeah, I'll definitely attend that panel because I'm real interested in that.
Good.
So you had was it a one-day conference? Is how you did it?
Yeah, that's one decision we made was that since we were just appearing in the heat, we kind of thought, well, folks who can drive go to the thing and then go home. It cuts down on the expense so much for the individual. True. Plus, as a committee, we wouldn't have to make all kinds of arrangements with hotels and things like that. Right. As it turned out, we had about, I can't remember now, was it 78? I think there were 78 to 90 people there. Pretty good. And I think 12 of them stayed in town the night before. There was a hotel just a couple blocks from where we met, and they did give a little discount. So a bunch of people, maybe a dozen people, stayed there, and 3 or 4 stayed over Saturday, the same night too, the night that we ended. But the bulk just drove in for the day, and we just figured we weren't trying to get people from all over, although it turned out we did. We had somebody from California and, of course, one speaker from England, and so forth. But it was mostly local. Yeah. So, and what? I'm sorry. Excuse me. It was regional, I don't mean local around Olympia so much. Right. So, what did you do there? Did you have they're doing in Austin where you had panels and workshops and speakers? Yeah, we had mostly one large group kind of things. We really only split up once. That makes sense. Yeah. But I think it might have been more interesting if we'd had more variety. And that was one of the recommendations we got from people who attended. It was good. We had a lot of great speakers. Roger was there. And so a lot of it was very good. And it's mostly the experience of meeting similar people. Absolutely. And knowing that you're not alone. Yeah. And getting ideas or motivation. Yeah. That's what it was about as far as we were concerned, was to, number one, let's get together because it's fun, and number two, maybe people will be encouraged to start groups of their own at home. Absolutely. That's what I think is the best thing about these conventions. When I went to Santa Monica, we had already started our group in Kansas City, but it hadn't been going for very long. I was still pretty new to all of this. So I was pretty
I don't know. It was a very moving experience for me to go to Santa Monica and to meet all these other people like me, and that were interested in AA and interested in starting meetings. And it was pretty life changing, I think, to a certain extent. But you know what? There were a lot of meetings that started after that conference too.
Oh yeah, it was a real kickstart. I think Pam and Dorothy did a great job, and I thought that they had a very good array of activities, and panels and things like that. We didn't do so much of that, as it turned out. It was more, and partly we felt time constraints because we knew people had to drive home.
Right.
And
right.
So if it were a 2-day thing, it might have been a little different. But then we would have lost people who couldn't come for 2 days. So just the local committee has to decide. Well, what do we think would work in our situation? And
yeah, I think that if we did one here, we'd probably start with just a 1-day convention. I'm thinking that we would probably try to rent the facilities at our church again, like we did for Roger's thing, because that worked out pretty well. And it was not that expensive. We didn't charge anybody for that little thing because it was our anniversary. But did you sell tickets for Olympia?
Yeah, we charged. I can't remember what we charged. I think it was $25.
Okay.
We did not have scholarships. We just didn't want to get into all the issues that brings up. There was one woman who simply couldn't eat what we had for lunch, and we gave her a little break on the price.
Yep.
And we actually wound up with a surplus, $200 or $300.
Okay.
And what we've done with that is that our home group, We Ags, has put that in their treasury as a special, sub account. And the idea is that, because a lot of people are interested in doing it again, maybe.
Yeah, I was hoping that you would.
And that'll give them a little grub stake to get started. And if nobody does it, then we'll just put it into general service and distribute it to other levels.
Sure. Yeah, I would like to have our Midwest one to be done like, annually or whatever, because I'm thinking it would just be, it'll start off kind of small and probably would just consist of people from the Midwest, like Missouri, Nebraska, Iowa. People can get there. Yeah, well, you have a pretty big concentration of people there. Yeah. Yep, we do. Yeah.
I think it'd be very successful. I'd really encourage you to do that.
Yep. And we would probably have to charge too. Anyway, it's kind of interesting.
There are costs.
They're very expensive.
We held ours at a church also. It's a very liberal church that already houses a few 12-step type meetings and a homeless shelter and whatever. And we said, well, what would you charge? Because we were looking at other venues that were going to cost us hundreds and hundreds of dollars. And they said, oh, whatever, why don't you, if you have any surplus, why don't you split it with us? And if you don't have any surplus, that's okay. So that was their attitude. And I think the liberal churches like this one or the Unitarians are apt to do that kind of thing.
Yep. And I tell you, the church they had it at in Santa Monica, that was a really, really nice facility. That was lovely. That was really beautiful.
Santa Monica is a pretty affluent community.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. So, what are your thoughts about Austin coming up in a few months?
Well, I'm going to go.
Yeah, I know you'll be a speaker there.
Quite a few are going to go from our home group here because those of us who went to Santa Monica were pretty excited. So I suspect we'll have half a dozen probably down in Austin. So I'm really looking forward to it.
How many people did you have from your area in Santa Monica? I'm just curious.
Pardon me?
How many people from your area went down to Santa Monica?
There were just 3 from Olympia, and I don't remember if there were other Washingtonians or not. Okay.
See, I think that's interesting because I think that's what's going to happen is you're going to have, like last time, you'd have 1 or 2 people from a city, and this time you're going to have 6 or 7 people from a city. Yeah,
have half a dozen this time, And it's a pretty fur piece from where we are. And so I'm hoping that they'll have the next one, which I'm assuming there will be, somewhere like Chicago or Toronto.
Yep.
hit that end of the Midwest, and then maybe on the East Coast, and just keep it moving around so people can get to them readily.
Yep, I think Toronto would be an appropriate place. I've never been there. I think I'd like to see it. I've never really been to Canada, really. So,
oh, okay.
I think I was actually on Lake Champlain, which goes into Canada. That was there. Yeah. I did that once. That was a long time ago. Okay. So that'd be kind of fun. I have to get a passport.
My wife's name is Helena. We get to travel quite a bit, and we go back to England as often as we can because she's from England. Yeah. And it's interesting. I don't think that secular AA is going to grow very fast there because their general meetings are so non-religious.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's kind of cool. But every region is different, and I think just exposing our ideas to different parts of the country is a good idea.
Yep. I agree with that. So, do you have any idea what you're going to be talking about during your talk?
Now you're making me nervous.
I know.
As if I weren't nervous about it already. I have some general ideas. I think I'm probably going to talk about what it was like, what it's like now.
Yeah.
With a general emphasis on the kinds of things we've been talking about this morning, and some of the ideas or opinions I have. I don't think I have anything new to share.
Yeah.
Because every time I say something in a meeting, I always wonder to myself, now I wonder where I heard that.
Right. Yeah.
So, but I'll have a different collection of things I've heard than the next guy, so it's worth standing up and telling them.
Yeah.
I have some opinions that are heretical. I'll probably talk about those a little bit.
There you go. Well, you have a lot of years' experience. There's no doubt about that.
Well, so far, I haven't been drinking anyhow.
Yeah.
Well, and I have been extremely lucky in terms of getting to go to a lot of meetings. I mean, in a lot of different places. Like I say, we travel. I got to go to Paris a few years ago, and they've got 3 English language secular meetings there.
Yeah, I was really interested.
I got to go to all of those.
Yeah, I was talking to John C. A few weeks ago about the meetings in Paris, and that was really interesting to me that they have pretty much just as many English-speaking meetings in Paris as they do French-speaking meetings.
Yeah, they have a lot of them. A lot. I didn't go to any of the non-secular ones.
Yeah, and then he started I think 2 secular meetings. And then there was one. The first meeting he started was a Living Sober meeting because he just liked that book. And then he
I do too.
Yeah. Then he started the 2. No, he started one, and then the other one was like a meditation meeting, which he doesn't like very much. But that was really interesting to talk to him about and learn about what AA was like in Paris. I mean, you still have the same thing about alcoholics and drinking and dying and the recovery and the struggles and everything. But so that sense is still
all
the same. Yeah,
we're all the same. Interesting thing about the meditation meeting, I went to that, is it meets in a Communist Party workshop.
Oh, really?
Where they make signs and things.
Isn't that funny?
That would raise lots of eyebrows in the States, but
yeah. So you went to the meditation meeting that he was talking about in Paris?
Yes, I did.
Oh, wow, that's funny.
Yeah. And I enjoyed it. They would play a guided meditation tape for 15 or 20 minutes, and then they turn the lights back up, and then we'd have a discussion, and it was a good meeting.
Yep.
But they're all good if people aren't drinking.
That's true.
I think there would normally be 8 to 12 people at that meeting. One of the others was even better attended. It was down in the basement of a community center sort of a place. And then the third one we only went to once because it's so bloody hot.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't a well-ventilated building, but it was fine. It was half dozen people in an office setting. And
yep.
It's always good if people are staying sober and talking honestly.
Yep. Yeah, I hope to do a little bit of traveling after a while. My wife and I want to travel more. Right now we travel maybe every other year. We'll go someplace, but it's always in the United States. Sometimes we want to go over to Europe. My wife is crazy about England. She went to England. Yeah, she went there when she has a cousin. Her cousin is English. And was raised there, and so she spent a summer there when she was young and fell in love with it. Fell in love with the country, so she wants to go back.
I am too. Yeah. Well, and since my wife's from there, we get back there just as often as we can. Mm-hmm. I was active in the Red Cross for a while too. I don't know how they're organized now, but they had a national disaster setup where for the really big events like what's going on in Louisiana now, they could call in people from around the country because the local chapter would just get overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. And I got to do that for a few years, and so I got to attend meetings wherever I was at the moment. So that was a fortunate thing for me.
Yeah, it's
I've been to a meeting in Omaha, but this was probably 10 or 12 years ago.
Yeah, and it is kind of fun to go to those meetings in different places. I never I never did that too much until recently. I guess early on I went to some meetings in Florida and California, but I went to this meeting in New York. I guess it was last year when my wife and I were there, and I really enjoyed that meeting. And I still talk about it all the time because
New York City.
It was just, and it was not a secular meeting. It was just a regular AA meeting, but it was really a very nice meeting. And it was not. You wouldn't think. It wasn't very religious. They did close with the Serenity Prayer. But the people there, they weren't talking like a lot of the meetings around here. It was just very, very, very nice. But the way that they did the meeting, I liked the format. In fact, we actually did that at our Saturday meeting today. What they did is, rather than read something and everybody go around and talk about it, they had a woman come in who spoke for like 10 or 15 minutes, and then everybody went around and kind of shared based upon what that person talked about.
That's a very common pattern. Some places we get to spend some time down around San Diego, and that's a very common model down there where they'll have a person share for 10 to 20 minutes, and then people talk. And normally they will respond to whatever the speaker said, but not necessarily.
Yeah.
If they have something else more urgent, they're going to talk about that. But that's a good format too.
I like it a lot because our meetings, the way I grew up in AA, it was always you read some from AA literature and then everybody goes around and talk about it. So that's all I ever knew. But sometimes it gets a little bit stale when you just read the same books over and over. It's like you become kind of almost conditioned to like, okay, I know what I'm going to say about this particular topic. But like today we had this person who we just said, okay, you're going to talk for 10 or 15 minutes. And a very, very interesting conversation ensued from that I think was different than from what our normal reading would have been. I really liked it. So when they do that around here, they usually call it a speaker meeting. Is that the term that's used in the Midwest? Well, yeah, but the speaker meetings are usually like there isn't any discussion after that. So if you go to a speaker meeting, they're usually
I see. It's just the speaker.
Just the speakers. Just the speaker talks. But this one is a little bit different, where the person talks and then everyone else gets to talk also after the speaker. So
yeah, it's not a bad model. Also, what happens is you wind up people asking somebody to come be the speaker from your area, and I think it increases communication among the groups that way.
Yeah, there's actually an agnostic group who, I think they're actually in the Midwest, who actually reached out to other just regular AA groups to have speakers come to their group. And I thought that was a good idea because it is kind of a nice way for us to kind of, I don't know. I don't think that. I think it's good to kind of reach out to the traditional.
That is
AA
a good
people.
idea.
I think so. Because when we had the people out here, because agnostic AA is fairly new, I guess, in Kansas City anyway. So there's a lot of people that might have been somewhat skeptical, not really understanding what it's all about. But when they come to meet us, they see that they're basically the same. I mean, they're doing the same things that we're doing.
Yeah, so that's a good idea. Thank you for mentioning that. I'm going to bring that up in my group.
Yeah,
or my home group.
Well, like you say,
I went to a meeting in Victoria, British Columbia, on Vancouver Island. and we were up there for a couple of weeks, and I didn't quite get it because they said, well, they have 2 or 3 or 4 topics to which people can react, and it's a very small meeting. It's only about a year old, and they said, this week we'll be doing the 4th step and the 4th tradition, and then next week we'll do the 5th step and the 5th tradition. They work through that way. Say, what else would people like to talk about? And then people bring up 1 or 2 other general topics, and then the people attending can address any of those. Well, the second time I went, I felt bold enough to ask them afterwards. I've never known a secular group that used the traditional steps. And they said, well, the reason we do that is that when we started out, it started to turn into a God-bashing session. And that's not what we're here for. And so we thought just to stabilize things, we would do this for a while.
Well, that's interesting.
So there's just a million models, and they're all good.
We use the regular steps as far as we have step meetings probably once a month, but we talk about the steps more often than that. But we do use the regular steps as they're worded. However, we don't use AA literature, so we usually refer to like the Alternative 12 Steps book and other books like that, because the AA World Services literature doesn't work for most of us very well. But
no. It's the only exception I can think of is the Getting Sober book.
Yep. That is a pretty good book, and that's a book I didn't read too much for most of my time in the program, because I went to a group that was really devoted to the big book and the 12 and 12, and I think that they kind of dismissed living sober as being less worthy in some way.
Well, I'm kind of fanatical about people at some point writing their own steps.
Yes.
That, which because I had this tussle all the time, about it. I know that the program's historically uses 12 steps, but I don't like the 12 steps, so what am I going to do about this? It's all right, write your own damn steps.
Yep.
And so I did, and of course, because there's a lot of really sound spirituality and psychology in the 12 steps.
Yep.
And so basically mine reflects those parts of that, and then a couple other things I put in. But,
no, I agree.
I think it was a good personal exercise for me to do that, to clarify my own thinking about what I think is important.
It was for me too. And you know what's kind of funny is I was in AA for 25 years, and it never, ever, ever occurred to me to write my own, write the steps.
I just thought of it a few years ago.
I know. And then all of a sudden this agnostic AA stuff, I probably saw like alternative steps on AA Agnostic or something, and that's when I got the idea that, I can actually write these steps out in my own language.
Sure you can. Well, something I learned in the early years is that for several years I felt kind of guilty because I was in AA and I wasn't quote working the steps.
Yeah.
I didn't feel I was doing that, and I thought, well, maybe I'm not really a valid member of this. Maybe I'm not really working a sober program because I just can't do these steps. And then I think somebody must have pointed it out to me. Are you drinking? I said, well, no. What did you come here for? Well, to learn not to drink. Okay.
What I think is funny too, the first time I ever met people that said they don't have any use for the steps was in agnostic AA, and at first it kind of shocked me, but now I realize no, it's not really such a big deal, because I mean, in any AA meeting, whether it's a traditional meeting, agnostic AA meeting, there's a certain percentage of people that don't work the damn steps. The only difference is that in agnostic AA, we're honest about it. You're more likely to say, I don't work them. I think they're BS. But
and they're agnostics who do and are perfectly comfortable with them, and that's okay.
Yeah. So in that sense, we're really not that different. It's just that we are a little bit more honest, because it's okay in our groups to say, I don't have any use.
I think getting rid of all the shoulds we can is pretty important. You don't have to have a sponsor. You don't have to do 90 meetings in 90 days. You don't have to read the literature. You don't have to, if it helps, do it. And if it doesn't help, then don't do it. Do something else, but just don't take that first drink.
Right.
And eventually you'll be better off.
Yeah, there's no... you have to tailor this for every person. Every person's recovery is unique. There isn't a one-size-fits-all approach to everybody.
Absolutely.
Everybody has to find their own way.
Uh-huh.
So, anyway.
Even though we have all of these commonalities,
it's our experience that's common, I think.
Mm-hmm.
It's our experience with alcoholics is common, and I think that, if we get to AA, most of us have some kind of experience in common as far as when we start asking for help, but other than that, there's some differences, I guess, as you go through from there.
Mm-hmm.
But, well, I really enjoyed talking to you. I look forward to meeting you.
Oh gosh, I have too. It's always good to talk to other folks in the program, whatever the reason.
I love these podcasts. I get emails from people occasionally who don't get to go to agnostic AA meetings, and they value these podcasts because it gives them an opportunity to hear people who talk about the program in their own language.
Yeah.
So it's good for them, but it's also good for me. It's every time I talk to somebody on one of these podcasts, I get to know that person a little bit better, and I get to. It's like an AA meeting for me. It helps me. So
yes, absolutely.
So thank you for that.
Yeah. Well, I'm hard of hearing, so I don't relate all that well to audio stuff.
Oh, okay.
So I've never really gotten into podcasts or books on tape or that sort of thing. I can do it, but it's work.
Yeah, well, good news
but
for
I'm
you.
certainly going to start looking up and listening to some of the ones you've done with folks.
Well, we're starting to put transcripts out now, written transcripts for each podcast, so you can actually read.
Yeah, I know you have, and that's great.
Yeah, we're going to start doing that more.
Now you're managing Beyond Belief.
Yeah, Doris.
Yeah, that's been a real asset, I think.
It's been amazing to be a part of. Doris A. does the bulk of the editorial work as far as the articles go. She lives in Urbana, Illinois, and she does amazing work. So, like, every time somebody...
I just really appreciate you guys doing that, because, Roger did so much to get the whole idea started.
Yeah.
And to know that, now we have both, both of the...
Well, it's very rewarding work. It's very rewarding to do. Well... I look forward to seeing you in Austin. That will be a lot of fun.
It's going to be fun to meet you in person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Pat. Well, that's it for another episode of AA Beyond Belief, the podcast. I hope you enjoyed the program. We'll be back next week to speak with Mark Seed, who just wrote an article we published today. Mark is from Wichita Falls, Texas, and has a really interesting story. I think you'll enjoy that one. Until then, y'all take care and be well.